'cause we wanna live free. We want clean water, clean air, a life that's fair, a world that cares. We don't wanna pay just to survive, to rent a life on the land we're born by. We wanna raise our kids in love, not fear, not war, not push to shove. We want healthy, happy lives, food that's true, no more lies. We don't need someone on a throne, we just wanna live and be left alone. We are taking our home back hand in hand, a world that listens, a world that understands. We're tired of fighting just to eat, of systems built to make us weak. We're not the ones who broke the trust, but we'll be the ones to build what's just. We want healthy, happy lives, food that's true, no more lies. We don't need someone on a throne, we just wanna live and be left alone. We are taking our home back hand in hand, a world that listens, a world that understands. We are not the enemy. We just want heaven back on Mother Earth, to live in happiness, abundance, and peace. That's all we've ever wanted. That's all we ever need.
Hey, hey, hey. Welcome, everybody. It is Monday night Raw, if you will, because we're going to be a little bit raw in the beginning of the show. So if you don't see people you normally see on, get them awake, stir them, poke them, choke them, drag them, kick them, bring them screaming. We're going to tell it like it is here in a minute. Share, like, and subscribe. Share, like, and subscribe, and say hello to everybody as you're jumping on. We must not be deceived by unlawful orders. That's from the top of the pile to the very bottom of the pile. Get your peeps on, folks. Even those that may not want to hear this, they need to be on and listen. Share, like, and subscribe. Let's get the word out. Some crazy shit's going to be happening soon, and they don't need to let it be crazier than it already is. Yeah, the heat is something else. Flip flops, short sleeves, and shorts. Me, I'm covered in a blanket. I got the cold chills. But I'm doing good. I'm here to share with you tonight. Can everybody hear me? Are we 5x5?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome.
I can't drive 55.
I can't drive 55. Oh, some Van Halen there. Well, I'm going to give it about another minute and a half, folks. We need to see these numbers jump. Get everybody on. Get them awake. Call the Slap-a-Hoe tribe. They're going to be wanting to slap some hoes here in a minute.
Is that your disclaimer, Mike?
Yep. That's my disclaimer.
Yeah, Johnny thinks the MIC turned the microwave up to 11.
Wow.
It's a very, well, here it's humid. It's a different kind of hot. I don't know how to describe it.
Right. It's where you get your stainless steel bowl that fits in the cubby hole of one of your intake, one side of the intake, and throw you a couple boiled
Right?
eggs and a couple eggs in there and boil them on the way to work. All right, so we got a few more people on. They're going to miss out, but I'm going to get ready to raise a little hell, folks, in a good way, okay? These people try and take your homes. These judges and courts operating in, really in treason. Truth be known, it goes all the way to the top. So why not start here? It's the international public notice given out on June the 21st of 2025. It was issued to all the generals. Trump can't declare war. Trump can't declare war. Trump can't declare war for the same reason Abraham Lincoln couldn't declare war. He isn't president of his country. He is the president of a corporation. The U.S. Territorial Congress has no ability to declare war either. The only Congress with the ability to declare an actual war was the American Federal Republic Congress, or in their absence, a lack of performance, or our Federation Continental Congress could poll the states and declare war, which is mainly what went on before these idiots thought they were running our country. Mr. Trump, like Lincoln, is calling for another mercenary conflict, and we clearly are saying no. And another step in this direction will be the default of the U.S. service contract. The most likely motivations for this are Trump is a Trojan horse, only pretending to be pro-American, which is indicated by his participation in the pandemic. Or he is doing this to make himself into a wartime president, so in theory, can't be arrested by the same military he commands during wartime. This may be a big concern, as technically he is supposed to cough up $450 million by Monday, thanks to a court case he has lost. But it doesn't matter anyway, because he is the wrong kind of president to be able to invoke that particular wartime protection. As commander-in-chief of a mercenary force, he is a subject to arrest as any other commercial corporation CEO would be at that time. Keep your ears on the low and know the truth, so you are not surprised by all this whirling madness. Do not be deceived by unlawful orders. Again, issued in care of Box 520-994, Big Lake, Alaska 99652, June 21st, 2025. International public notice. Folks, there's going to be people hurt by this narrative. There's going to be people that are going to go down because of this narrative. People like Pete Hegseth and most likely Donald Trump.
Don't forget about Rubio.
Yeah, Marco Rubio is another one, exactly. I'm scrolling down through here to see if I missed any other public notices that are that important. I don't see any at this time, okay? What I do see is an 18-minute video that I'm going to share with you. Corporations cannot declare war. She brings the receipts. Corporations engage in illegal and unlawful mercenary conflicts. Not war. Donald Trump isn't president of this country. He isn't president. He is the president of the corporation, merely calling itself the United States of America Incorporated, another British Crown corporation, one that specializes in providing cheap mercenary services and refined oil products. And the State of Israel is just a franchise corporation. The State of Israel, Inc., of the multinational conglomerate mentioned above. How is it possible that the above facts have escaped everyone's attention? These so-called service organizations have submitted themselves for the actual national government, and the various bar associations have helped them do it. This, folks, is reality. It's been reality for a long time. Times have been tough for the U.S. Inc., so they are drumming up businesses. War business, they just used their State of Israel Inc. franchise to do the dirty work of starting it. These are corporations masquerading as governments. They have no authority. They are just renegade multi-international crime syndicates. And they may take their money from war and theft and other people's resources. So guess what? We are kept at constant war, and people all over the world hate the Americans when it isn't even the Americans at fault. It's not an American corporation doing this. It's a British territorial corporation. It has been headquartered for many years in Puerto Rico. Go figure. USA Incorporated is a British Crown corporation operating out of Washington, D.C. And she goes on to continue in the video. So let me get this shared. The Trumpster cannot declare war. Fuck him. I'll give him 30 minutes to draw a crowd and kiss his ass if he does.
Wow. We are in the final clenches. The corporations have tried to do everything they could to, accuse us of things and make themselves look good and use money against us and everything that you can think of that would their normal tactics they've thrown at us and more, because they realize that they're not getting anywhere, and they really don't understand why they're not getting anywhere and why they can't get anywhere. And it all boils down simply to this: they don't have standing. Mm-hmm. So There's a vast restructuring of the world as we know it, where the actual people, the actual owners and heirs are getting their stuff back. And I've had several people come to me over the past week and a half, saying that they have issues where they've been harmed and they don't see any possible way of getting any restitution. And there are things that you can't get restitution for. I mean, if your son was killed in Iraq as part of a patrol in an illegal war that was sponsored by a undisclosed, undeclared foreign corporation acting in a criminal fashion, there's no way to bring him back. There's no way to undo the damage that's been done. There's no way to pay that in money ever. There is no amount of money that can take away that pain. And it's, the same thing. I got this heart-wrenching letter from a woman in Palestine, in Gaza, who had lost 3 children. And she asked me the same question, what can ever make up for that?
There's nothing on this earth that can make up for that.
No, there's not. You get a situation like we've got in Israel. Just look at what happened. The Holocaust and all that suffering and all that murder and mayhem. And what did the Jews do? They leave Germany, they go to Palestine, they set up Israel, and they start doing the same exact thing to people in Palestine. When they started immigrating, it was prior to the Second World War by quite a number of years. The German government had an accord that said that Jews could emigrate from Germany and take a certain amount of money and whatever with them, and they were free to emigrate to Palestine. The German government wouldn't stop them. And I forget what the name of that was, but it was an accord, an international accord that was set up years before the Second World War. And, at certain points, large numbers of Jewish refugees showed up in Palestine, and the Arabs that were living there and the Christians that were living there and the native Jews who had never left the area opened up their homes and took these refugees. And I don't know how many people study such things, but in Islam, being hospitable to strangers is a sacred duty. Taking people in and showing them hospitality is required of them as part of their religion. And so they took in all these refugees and shared food and whatever they had with them. And then shortly thereafter, these refugees got established, and they started hauling their Arab neighbors off into concentration camps. The same kind of thing that had been done to them, they did to the Palestinians there that were already living in Palestine. And so what they learned from the Holocaust was how to be a Nazi. And we're still seeing that today. We're still seeing apartheid being practiced by the Israeli government. And we're still seeing these acts of heinous disregard for life. After the 750,000 Arabs were displaced from their homes and were taken out into the desert and dumped on what they called the Gaza Strip, and they had nothing. They literally dug for water with their bare hands. And that's how the Gaza Strip came to be. 80% of the people that were living in the Gaza Strip at the time of this most recent genocide were people that had either been directly displaced or their children and grandchildren. So not only did they displace them once, now they've gone full tilt genocide on them and have carpet bombed Gaza, not once, but twice. And when I say carpet bombed, I'm talking about the firestorm of Dresden. I'm talking like overlapping bomb craters for miles. And they did this once, and then they went back and they just recently did it again. These people are crazy. They're absolutely nuts. And the regime, when I say these people, I'm saying the regime. I'm not saying that all Israelis are like this or that all Israelis are culpable for this. But the people that are in charge of that government, which is not really a government, it's a incorporated entity, they're absolutely insane. And now they've attacked Iran. And in between, they've had incursions and attacks. They've attacked Lebanon, they've attacked Syria, and they've attacked Gaza, and now they've attacked Iran. No, this is nuts. This is crazy, Bill, okay? It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It has to do with what are you going to do with an insane asylum? The regime has to end. They've committed Jews, whether it's Jewish or whether it's German, they committed genocide. They have to go. And Netanyahu, I don't care how brilliant he may be, or, what kinds of magic he's been able to do with this, that, or the other thing. He's a madman. Anyone who goes out and attacks neighbors and does this sort of thing can't be allowed to continue. So I think that the problem that we have now is former members of the Congress and President Trump himself have been very supportive of Israel. Some of the members of Congress have even taken dual citizenship with Israel. So they're in conflict of interest and shouldn't even be sitting in Congress. Okay? So, they've been so supportive, and this has turned bad. Really, really, really bad. Not that it was ever good. And this is the other part of this I'm trying to bring forward. That whole situation over there has been wrong since the beginning. And it's just simply got worse and worse and worse. And we have been enabling this bad behavior by supporting him.
Well, for those of us that are just, we're assembling on the land and soil, sometimes these international issues feel so big, but at the same time, we can see how it can happen right here at home if we're not paying attention and we're not, standing up for what's right and putting an end to this evil. I mean, every time you and others and myself, we're hanging our peacetime flag, that's supposed to be a reminder that we're not at war. We're not here to fight with one another. We're not here to harm one another.
Right.
But out there and what's going on in the Middle East, it's so horrible. And the Bible, it tells us over and over and over and over. It's like ad nauseum how many times people have been divided and they just want to kill each other. That's not it's not the solution.
No, and you know, as I pointed out, law isn't the solution.
Right.
Government is not the solution.
No.
All these things that we have put our faith in and our trust in, they're not the solution. We each individually are the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's through us making our choices differently that progress is made. But at the present moment, you've got a situation where Israel attacked Iran. Iran, though it is wounded, is a very large country, and it is very populous compared to Israel. I mean, overall. And it's got all sorts of capabilities. So Iran is dishing out terrible damage to Israel now. They took out major parts of the New York Stock Exchange, which were housed in Tel Aviv. They've taken out the Diamond Exchange, which was a major center of international commerce and jewels. They've continued to basically use missiles and drones to create incredible damage. And I don't think that Mr. Netanyahu acted responsibly or honorably or sensibly at all, because this would not be happening to Israel right now. It's so bad that a lot of the news commentators that you hear they make it almost sound like Israel isn't at fault for this. They make it sound like, Israel was the victim and that Iran was the aggressor, but that isn't what happened at all. Israel attacked the embassy of Iran in Lebanon, and Iran had the opportunity to go after Israel for that a long time ago and didn't. Then Israel has attacked Iran in a very shameless, cowardly, deceitful way, and now they're getting all sorts of missiles and drones and other kinds of attacks back. And we have to understand, Israel has brought this on itself by its own actions. It has brought this on itself by its actions in Gaza. It's brought this on itself by its actions in Lebanon. It has brought this on itself by its actions in Syria. And now it's bringing it on because of its own actions in Iran. I mean, it's a 4 for 4 here, folks. There's no excuse for it. There was no reason for it. They didn't have to attack. They just attacked to get something started because they make their money off of war. These corporations make their money from war. And so when they get hard up, they just go start a war. And the rest of us pay for it, both literally and physically and spiritually and every way that you can think. And we have to stop this. We have to stop these corporations from pretending that they're governments. We have to bring them back within the bonds of a civil world. And we have to take action against this kind of thing. Or we're all going to suffer the consequences. This morning I'm listening to a military briefing, and they're talking about going into Israel and basically bombing a whole mountain full of nuclear weapons, causing it to implode upon itself. But of course, when it does that, there's a more than decent chance that one or more of these nuclear weapons are going to detonate and turn the entire area into an unusable, uninhabitable wasteland, bigger than the country of Israel. This is how stupid it's gotten.
Yeah, people would rather kill each other than work it out.
So I'm just kind of giving you the heads up that when we do these things, when we let vengeance rule our lives, when we don't say goodbye to the past and embrace now, then this is what happens. You know, the people there are still hanging on to the victimhood and the wounds of the Second World War. And they think that that justifies all of their own bad behavior, their own genocides, their own cruelty. We have to get past that. Everybody has to get past that. We have to learn not to hit back when we win and we have our hated enemy at our feet. We have to learn not to take that final stroke. And not take revenge and do our best to start over. Anyway, very disappointing, very sad, and very dangerous situation. And we have a microcosm of it right in our own assemblies. So let's all, as coordinators, let's lead toward peace. Okay?
Yep. Thank you, Anna. That's great.
All right. So we can run around in fear of nuclear war, or we can run around and stand up for ourselves and end this thing peacefully. The choice is ours. The hour is now. What shall we do? With that, I yield for a few minutes. Sheepdog, got to run to the little boy's room. I'll be right back.
All right. I'm just going to read a little bit from the book here. Let me share a screen real quick. If you got your Meet Your Straw Man book and whatever you want to know, you can pull that out. But I'm going to pull that up on the screen, a PDF. Here we go. All right. So they need your fear in order to fuel the war, right? The wartime narrative that it's like some kind of wet dream that some people have to see bloodshed in order to quell their thirst for, or to fulfill the prophecy, or you got to murder these people over here in order to fulfill this prophecy, and to fulfill that prophecy, you got to go take this land over there.
Which they have used over and over.
So I'm going to go good. I'm going to do right here is just to piggyback off what Mike was saying. And for evil to triumph, all that is necessary is for good men to do nothing. Right. But I'm going to go first all the way up here. And we're going to look at, let's see where we at. Okay, right here. Let me see if I can zoom in. All right, the United States Corporation is a private company. The non-federal Federal Reserve Bank is a private company set up in the year 1913, right? As every court, let me get this little, and every police force and even Congress is a company and not a person. That's why I said the corporation only exists on paper. Everyone else is just acting as actors. That's why you say call them all actors, whatever position they're in. Just in case you are not aware of it, the purpose of any commercial for-profit company or corporation is to make money for its owners and shareholders, if there are any. The people who you think of as quote unquote the government don't do anything that earns money. They instead take money from you, and their main job is to make sure that you don't realize that they are in the same position as IBM, which takes away millions of your money every year. So why all the pretense of there being a genuine government which you elect and who serves you? They don't want you to understand that they are just running a company which produces nothing of any worth, something like a betting shop where almost even the customer loses money. And they wake up to that fact. Unlike what you have been told all your life, this is all optional and you don't need to play their rip-off game any longer unless you want to. They want you to be so burdened down with paying them money and working so hard and so long that you don't have the time, money, or energy to stop and think about what is happening to you and your family. They are desperate to stop you from just walking away from their scam. So they make every effort to connect you with the fiction, which is your straw man, because fictitious entities like commercial companies can't have any dealings with a real man or real woman. That's why they always ask you for your ID, right? Because they want to deal with the fictitious entity. Instead of just seeing you as a real man or real woman standing in front of them, they have to revert to the ID. They can only deal with another fiction like your straw man, and it is essential that they fool you into believing that you have to act on behalf of your straw man, which you do not. They have a number of well-proven methods of distracting you and keeping you from finding out. They want you to see a great deal of entertainment, not because there is anything wrong with entertainment, but while you are being entertained, you will not be asking awkward questions. Also, they are very careful that most entertainment reinforces their make-believe world and makes it appear to be the real world, where everyone is under the government, quote, the government. Police officers uphold the law. Taxes are essential in order to keep things going, and things which are said to be bad for you are taxed heavily, not to make money, but supposedly to encourage you to avoid those things. You will notice that they keep saying that their invented statutes are the law, which they are most certainly are not. But if they say it often enough, people start believing it and never think to question what they say. They also have another very effective technique, and that is fear. They want you to be afraid of imaginary terrorists, afraid of disasters, afraid of a new disease or new diseases, afraid of foreign countries, afraid of the quote unquote the economy or doing badly and inflation rising. So if you doubt this, then take a look at the news and count the number of positive, uplifting news items and the number of negative or depressing news items. It doesn't take much in the way of research to see that the very heavy negative bias in the news, the reason behind this is to make you feel that you need a government and an army to protect you from those supposed dangers, the invisible enemy, the boogeyman. It is easy to keep the news items biased that way because all of the major news agencies and media outlets in the world are owned by only 5 or 6 privately owned commercial companies. And then I want to go down to here. Back down to 68 if you got the book. Oh, yeah, 62. I want to look. All right. For evil, this is what I read earlier. For evil to triumph, all that is necessary is for good men to do nothing. For example, why did the United States attack Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yemen? Why are U.S. operatives helping to destabilize Syria? And why is the United States government so intent in taking down Iran in spite of the fact that Iran has not attacked any country since 1796? Or what's this? Yes, but I'm sure it's a typo on this. So Iran hasn't attacked any country since the late 1700s, early 1800s. And what's next? What are we headed for? When you look at the current trajectory that we are on, it doesn't make any sense at all if you evaluate it on what we are taught in school. And it doesn't make any sense if you base your worldview on the propaganda that the mainstream media tries to pass off as news. But it makes perfect sense once you know the real motives of the powers that be. In order to understand those motives, we first have to take a look at history. So in 1945, we had Britain with an agreement established the dollar as the world's reserve currency, which was meant that international commodities were priced in dollars. The agreement, which gave the United States a distinct financial advantage, was made under the condition that those dollars would remain redeemable for gold at a consistent rate of $35 per ounce. That the United States promised not to print very much money, but this was on the honor system because the Federal Reserve refused to allow any audit or supervision of its printing presses. So in the years leading up to 1970, expenditures in the Vietnam War made it clear to many countries that the U.S. was printing far more money than it had in gold. And in response, they began to ask for their gold back. So this, of course, set off a rapid decline in the value of the dollar. The situation climaxed in 1971 when France attempted to withdraw its gold and Nixon refused. On the 15th of August, Nixon made the following announcement. I have directed the Secretary of Treasury to take action, the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I've directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and in conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States Corporation. This was obviously not a temporary suspension, as he claimed. Remember, so that's what, nearly 50, 60 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was just temporary.
I think they say it's temporary, but never
Just give us 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
a little 2-week notice.
Just like the Patriot Act was only supposed to be temporary, and it's still in place today.
That's right. So this was obviously not a temporary suspension, as he claimed, but rather a permanent default, and for the rest of the world who had entrusted the United States with their gold. United States is the corporation, the company. It was outright theft. In 1973, President Nixon asked King Faisal of Saudi Arabia to accept only U.S. dollars in payment for oil and to invest any excess profits in U.S. Treasury bonds, notes, and bills. In return, Nixon offered military protection for Saudi oil fields. The same offer was extended to each of the key oil-producing countries, and by 1975, every member of OPEC had agreed to only sell their oil in U.S. dollars. So the act of moving the dollar off gold and tying it to foreign oil is instantly forced every oil importing country in the world to maintain a constant supply of Federal Reserve paper. And in order to get that paper, they would have to send real physical goods to America. This was the birth of the petrodollar. Paper went out. Everything in America needed came in, and the United States got very, very rich as a result. It was the largest financial con in recorded history. So the arms race of the Cold War was a game of poker. Military expenditures were the chips and the U.S. had an endless supply of chips. With the petrodollar under its belt, it was able to raise the stakes higher and higher, outspending every other country on the planet until eventually U.S. military expenditures surpassed that all of the other nations in the world combined. The Soviet Union never had a chance. So the collapse of the communist bloc in 1991 removed the last counterbalance to American military might. The United States was now an undisputed superpower with no rival. Many hoped that this would mark the start of a new era of stability and peace, but unfortunately, there were those in high places who had other ideas, right? So here we are, right? So within that same year, the U.S. invaded Iraq in the first Gulf War, and after crushing the Iraqi military and destroying their infrastructure, including hospitals, water purification plants they had, crippling sanctions were imposed, which prevented Iraq's infrastructure from being rebuilt. So these sanctions, which were initiated by Bush Sr. and sustained throughout the entire Clinton administration, lasted for over a decade and were estimated to have killed more than 500,000 children. The Clinton administration was fully aware of these figures. 500,000 kids dead. A TV interviewer speaking to Madeleine Albright, Secretary of the State for Clinton, asked, "We have heard that half a million children have died." Yeah, 500,000. I mean, that's more children that have died that's more children has died during that than Hiroshima. And this is the price. Is the price worth it? To which Madeleine Albright replied, "I think that this is a very hard choice, but we think that the price is worth it." 500,000 kids is worth it. Think about that. Miss Albright, what exactly was worth killing 500,000 children for? In November of 2000, Iraq began selling its oil exclusively in euros. This was a direct attack on the dollar and on the U.S. financial dominance, and it wasn't going to be tolerated. In response, the Els government, with the assistance of the mainstream media, began to build up a mass propaganda campaign claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and was planning to use them.
That sounds
Wow.
familiar.
Man, it's almost like it's like, what is that called? Deja vu? It's like you've done it before. It's almost like we've done it before. So in 2003, the U.S. invaded, and once they had control of, because this is all the propaganda you're hearing right now on the media, right? Weapons of mass destruction. I mean, nuclears. Got to prevent them from having nukes. Propaganda. I mean, people aren't putting two and two together. The same propaganda. So in 2003, the U.S. invaded, and once they had control of the country, oil sales were immediately switched back to dollars. This is particularly noticeable as switching back to the dollar meant a 15% to 20% loss in revenue due to the euro's higher value. It doesn't make any sense at all unless you take the petrodollar into account. So on March 2nd of 2007, the U.S. General Wesley Clark said, "So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, 'Are we still going to war with Iraq?' And he said, 'Oh, it's worse than that,' he said as he reached over on his desk and picked up a piece of paper. And he said, 'I just got this down from upstairs today,' meaning from the Secretary of Defense's office. 'This is a memo which describes how we are going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting off with Iraq and Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.'" So let's take a look at the events of the past decade and let's see if you can see a pattern, all right? In Libya, Gaddafi was in the process of organizing a bloc of African countries to create a gold-based currency called the dinar, which they intended to use to replace the dollar in that region. The U.S. and NATO forces helped to destabilize and topple the government in 2011, and after taking control of the region, U.S. armed rebels executed Gaddafi in cold blood and immediately set up the Libyan Central Bank. Iran has been actively campaigning to pull off oil sales off the dollar for some time now, and it has recently secured agreements to trade its oil in exchange for gold. In response, the U.S. government, with mainstream media assistance, has been attempting to build international support for military strikes on the pretext of preventing Iran from building a nuclear weapon. In the meantime, they established sanctions, which they admit are aimed at causing a collapse of the Iranian economy. So Syria is Iran's closest ally, and they are bound by mutual defense agreements. The country is currently in the process of being destabilized with covert assistance from NATO. And although Russia and China have warned the United States not to get involved, the White House has made statements in the past indicating that they are considering military intervention. And it should be clear that military intervention in Syria and Iran isn't just being considered, it is a foregone conclusion, just as it was in Iraq and Libya. The U.S. is actively working to create the context which gives them the diplomatic cover to do what they have already planned. The motive for these invasions and covert actions becomes clear when we look at them in their full context and connect the dots. Those who control the United States understand that even if a few countries begin to sell their oil in another currency, it will set off a chain reaction and the dollar will collapse. They understand that there is absolutely nothing else holding up the value of the dollar at this point, and so there's nothing holding it up.
No. But our recognizing them as still government and paying our taxes and all that is the only thing that's keeping them going.
Yep. That's it. It's like we're holding up the Monopoly board and they're playing a game on top of it.
Illusion by believing in it.
Yeah, we're holding up. We're this table holding up the Monopoly board while they play up the games.
Right.
So off our backs, right? So I'm going to read that again. They understand that there is absolutely nothing else holding up the value of the dollar at this point, and so does the rest of the world. But instead of accepting that fact that the dollar is nearing the end of its lifespan, the powers that be have made a calculated gambit. They have decided to use the brute force of the U.S. military to crush each and every resistant state in Africa and the Middle East. That in itself would be bad enough, but what you need to understand is that this is not going to end with Iran. So China and Russia publicly stated in no uncertain terms that they will not tolerate an attack on Iran or Syria. So here we are. So Iran is one of their key allies, one of the last independent oil producers in the region. See, last independent oil producers in the region. That's the problem.
They also won't. They won't have nothing to do with the central bank.
Right.
So either did Libya or Syria or Iraq.
And they understand that if Iran falls, then they will have no way to escape the dollar without going to war. And yet the United States is pushing forward in spite of the warnings. What we are witnessing here is a trajectory which leads straight to the unthinkable. It is a trajectory which was mapped out years ago in full awareness of the human consequences. So basically, they don't have a problem with killing 500,000 kids.
Right.
So, it is a trajectory which was mapped out years ago in full awareness of the human consequences. I want to read that again. And so they are aware of the consequences. They've already measured that out, but the benefits are way higher. They're okay with sacrificing people. But who was it that put us on this course? What kind of psychopath is willing to intentionally set off a global conflict which will lead to millions of deaths just to protect the value of a fiat paper currency? It obviously isn't the president. The decision to invade Syria Libya, and Iran was made long before Obama had risen to the national spotlight and long before Trump and, of course, fake Biden. And yet he is carrying out his duties just like the puppets who preceded him. So who is it that pulls the strings? And that's a good question, because if you look at what we're seeing today via the narrative we're seeing on TV, we're seeing the same shit that's been going on in 2000 that got us into the Iraq-Afghanistan war. So who is it that stays there regardless of who the face that you have sitting in the Oval Office?
The next puppet, yeah.
Who's the man behind the curtain? So often the best answer to questions like this are found by asking another question.
Oh no.
Q bono. Who benefits? Who benefits? Obviously, those who have the power to print the dollar out of thin air have the most to lose if the dollar were to fall. And since 1913, that power has been held by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a private entity owned by a conglomerate of the most powerful banks in the world. And the men who control those banks are the ones who pull those strings. To them, this is just a game. Your life and the lives of those you love are just pawns on their chessboard. And like a spoiled 4-year-old who tips over the board to start who tips over the floor to the board to the board to the floor when he starts to lose, the powers that be are willing to start World War III to keep control of the global financial system. So when the kid starts losing, they're the kid that flips over
Throws a tantrum.
throws a tantrum and says, "This ain't fair," or knows they're fixing to lose.
I should shoot 3 fingers. Just no.
So remember that when these wars accelerate and extend, remember that when your son or your neighbor's son comes back in a flag-draped coffin, remember that when they point the finger at the new boogeyman, because the madmen who are running the show will take this as far as you allow them to take it. So how much time do we have left? It is a question which I hear constantly, but it is the wrong question. Asking how much time we have left is a passive posture. It is the attitude of a prisoner who is waiting to be taken out to a ditch and shot in the back of the head. What are the chances? Can we change course? Right? Also, the wrong question. The odds don't matter anymore. If you understand what we are facing, then you have a moral responsibility to do everything in your power to alter the course we are on, regardless of the odds. It is only when you stop basing your involvement on the chances of your success that success actually becomes possible. To tip the ill-begotten power from the financial elites and bring these criminal cartels to justice will require nothing less than a revolution. The government is not going to save us. We save us. The government is completely infiltrated and corrupt to the core. Looking to them for a solution at this point is utterly naive. And then we talked about the 3 stages of revolution. And it's the first 2 you want to be involved in. It's also,
You don't want to go to 3,
right, civil disobedience is stage 2.
which we've been doing.
It's also known as nonviolent resistance. In this stage, you put your money where your mouth is, or more accurately, you withhold your money and your obedience from the government, and you do everything in your power to bring the gears of the state up to a halt. Practice in mass, this method alone, often enough, is to bring a regime to its knees. However, if it fails at this stage, stage 3 is inevitable.
And that's physical resistance.
That's a whole
We
other.
don't want to go to that.
So stage 1 is what we've been doing, is the ideological resistance. In this stage, we have to actively work to wake up as many people as possible about what is happening in the direction that we are headed. All revolutions originate from a shift in the mindset of the population, and no other meaningful resistance is possible without it. So changing of the mindset. Success in this stage of the game can be measured by the cognitive ideas, this word,
Contagion.
contagion of ideas. When an idea reaches critical mass, it begins to spread on its own and seeps into all levels of society. In order to achieve the contagion, we need more people in this fight, and we need more people speaking up. That's stage one. All right. And then making videos, writing articles, getting this information onto the national, international stage. And we especially need to reach the military and the police. That's it. But this goes, it talks about stage three. Stage three is direct physical resistance. Direct physical resistance is the last resort, and it should be avoided and delayed as long as possible, and only invoked when all other options have been thoroughly exhausted. There are those who walk tough, who talk tough, and claim that they will resist when the time comes. But what they fail to realize is that if you are inactive during the first two stages, you can save your efforts for the last resistance. You will fail if you try to save it for the last resistance. Because when the Nazis in Germany were moving from door to door, dragging people out of their homes, that was the time to fight back physically. But due to the lack of ideological resistance and civil disobedience leading up to that moment, even an armed uprising would have likely failed at that point. An armed uprising can only succeed if the people have established an attitude of active resistance. And active resistance is only possible after their minds have broken free from the mainstream media propaganda. If you want to fight back, then it is now or never. You're not going to get another chance, and the stakes are high, and they were high back in Nazi Germany. So the only way for this to prevail is for good men to do nothing. Right. For evil to triumph, all that is necessary is for good men to do nothing. I'll see if Mike's back.
Oh yeah, I'm back.
All right. I just read a little bit from the straw man just to reiterate. And also
very valid points.
Yeah, how we got here, so people can see the bigger picture.
Folks that don't know that this is a narrative for war, it's all narrative. It will become kinetic for them, okay? It will be a reality for them. We must stand up.
Yep, speak up if you can't stand.
Right.
And speak up and say no more children need to be murdered for profits for any corporation or entity.
All right. So we can ponder on that with everything else we already got going on in our own lives for quite some time now. Or we can make a decision and take our stand and speak up. Another international public notice was given out on June the 19th from the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent. It seems that you are still operating on false presumptions, Mr. Bessent. We, the actual lawful government of this country, already have a United States dollar. It's an ounce of pure silver. We, the actual lawful government of this country, already have a new gold standard asset-backed currency, the American Federation dollar. It's already in circulation. We don't approve of our federal subcontractors who are interfering and presuming authority related to duties and functions never actually delegated to them, but were delegated to other federal subcontractors issuing unauthorized currencies. Kindly cease and desist your plans to issue a gold-backed dollar and commence using the currency we have created to stipulate and stipulated as the gold standard currency for this country, the American Federation dollar. We contacted the U.S. Mint and instructed them to use certain of our unknown gold deposits to create and issue a new gold-backed American currency more than 4 years ago. The failure of two secretaries of the Treasury to listen and follow the instructions is no excuse for not listening now. Long after your opportunity to cooperate and expedite the issue or the issuance of the new American currency has passed. Cease and desist issuance of any competing currencies. It would be extremely inappropriate for a federal subcontractor to interfere in the exercise of rights and duties belonging to the United States of the Union, and furthermore, presuming the exercise their mutual powers when our states are in session and have already taken action. The right to issue our mutual currency was entrusted to the original American subcontractor being run by our Confederation of States doing business as the United States of America. It was never our will or intention to allow any other foreign federal subcontractor to take over the duty or exercise that right. We are well aware that the actual circumstances have been misrepresented, and that for many years undeclared agents of the British territorial United States have told the rest of the world that our government disappeared in absence and intergorum, if I said that correctly. This doesn't happen to be true. Being deliberately misidentified and left in the dark by our federal subcontractors doesn't add up to being absent, and nor does it create the incapacity of 1/3 of our government apparatus add up to incapacity overall. Our unincorporated Federation of States held all mutual powers and ran all business affairs, both international trade and commerce, for a period of 5 years, 1776 to 1781. And there's no reason to think we are incompetent to engage and run our own affairs now, with or without the assistance of any foreign federal subcontractor attempting to step into the role of the states of the American and the Federal Republic, either one. You need to come to an agreeable accommodation with your actual employers instead of ramming around trying to act in an unilateral way while exercising delegated powers that were never delegated to the United States of America Incorporated. We are making this as explicit as possible for everyone to know and hear. The American government showed up for work 5 years ago, is fully providence and declared, and we have claimed back all of the United States debt as the actual creditors in fact. We have also issued the American federal dollar as our gold standard currency. The American federal subcontractors were enabled to issue gold and silver coinage for us. Your British territorial operation is not, except by our specific invitation, which your predecessors declined 5 years ago. Your predecessors left us to do the work ourselves, so we have done it. And you are obligated to recognize the new currency as the currency of this country as a result. Similarly, your corporation was never enabled to directly access our credit, though it has contrived to do so, an issue we have taken up with the comptrollers and central banks and purported trustees, who are similarly never elected nor appointed by us. Please cease and desist all pretensions and acts contrary to our instructions, such as the emergency passage of stablecoin legislation. It is not appropriate to confuse the actions and the identity of a vendor with the actions of a principal. Cease and desist all such obfuscations and usurpations, deliberate confusions, and actions determined to establish public interests of the American people. Notice to agents is notice to principals. Notice to principals is notice to agents. Notice to agents is notice to principals. Notice to principals is notice to agents. Notice to agents is notice to principals. Notice to principals is notice to agents. The United States of America, in care of P.O. Box 520994, Big Lake, Alaska 99652, June 18th, 2025. All right. All these dogma liars telling you out there the RV is going to be starting soon and all that shit, they're lying to you. They have no currency for which to do it. That's public notice I just read to you. However, we have an American Republic government who is willing to play their part and lead us to our divine inheritance and rebuilding of humanity, a reconstruction. Where do you stand? Are you going to continue to follow those that will tell you that QFS and stablecoin and President Trump are going to lead you to the promised land from rags to riches, which is simply not true? Or are you going to stand up for your rights? Take notice of these international public notices and stand with the people. What do you think, Sheepdog?
Yeah. Bill said, once you correct your political status, you become the priority creator. So Bill. Correcting your status.
Right on. All right. It's getting simpler to me, folks. I don't know about the rest of you. It's getting simpler to me. So war is something the incorporations create because they're broke, usually, generally, or they need to make money. Peace is something that the Republic makes because there's no need for war for everybody to survive and live an abundant life. Natural law, God's law, the law of the land, Big Mama Earth knows the way. Will you stand with the people? Will you stand with the facade?
Hey, John. I mean, Mike. John on
Mhm.
Facebook. He wants you to prove that you're not AI.
Hey, John. I'm AI and I'm Mike. I mean, for real, dude. I mean, if I'm not AI, then I'm Mike. You know, AI is that good to make you think that Mike is AI. That's pretty good. But you're welcome to meet me anytime, John. I'll be glad to. Face to face, you can pull on my skin. I don't have on a mask. I'm just in the trenches like you, brother. Well, I hope like you. Oh my goodness. Well, I think we dropped quite a bit of information tonight already. We're only an
Mike.
hour and 16 minutes in. Wow.
Mike,
Yes,
they want
sir.
to make sure they want to make sure you're not a clone. So they said they want to do a belly button check.
Well,
Nikki said
they're
you
not
got to
getting
show it.
they're not getting a belly button check tonight. Hang on one second. I'll get them a belly button check. Excuse me. Let me see here. Belly button check. Wow.
Yeah, Christy, that's what they do. They just show the same clips over and over. People will just ask the questions, why do they got these little clips on loop? And especially after, you know, seeing what AI can do with these news clips, right? They can show you anything, just like Operation Bluebeam, they say.
And they always show a car burning, right?
She says she's watching the mainstream media coverage of the Iran stuff, that they continue to show the same clips over and over.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's it.
Or same traffic.
I've seen people sit up all night watching those same clips. 60,000 people on a YouTube channel sitting there watching a looped fireworks going off in
Or they give you
Palestine.
still
They keep saying there's a war, but you really don't have any proof of it. It's just the same old clips, just like they did back in Iraq. Same CNN and Fox running. CNN and Fox are running the same narrative that Iran is saying death to America. So when you have CNN and Fox on the same page, you got to watch out, especially with the CNN and Fox are on the same page with the lone wolf thing or whatever they're saying. They're sleeper cells.
Have you ever heard them say that? Is that what you're told?
Yeah, so the sleeper cell is what the narrative right now. So Fox and CNN are building a narrative which might lead to something take place. Who knows? As far as in a false flag, because they're already building the narrative. Yeah, they'll just show the same clips over and over. Yeah, and they think they're watching live feeds, but it's so obvious that they are not watching live feeds. Yeah, just like Wag the Dog, just how they were able to create a war on via the media. And keep in mind, the media and the military-industrial complex are all the same thing. So the same people that are saying they're bombing or the media, that's where they get their talking points from, especially from the Pentagon. I got something else I can play, Mike, if you. Unless you.
All right, go ahead. I'll find me a picture with a belly button in here.
Oh, is that what you're doing? You belly button shopping?
Yeah. Yeah.
We knew it, guys. He's a clone. He's got to go find him a stick on.
Our world is created based on our mindset, based on our beliefs, based on our culture, based on many factors, mainly that rely on people's mindset. In this mindset, if we recognize how powerful this is, it is no coincidence that mental slavery is seen as the root form of all forms of slavery. And therefore, if we may be under mental slavery, and we do not recognize that we are, and we see that we live in a world that needs to be improved, and many people would say we live in a world of tyranny, or perhaps slavery by the systems that be, we may need to evaluate our own morals and worldview to simply notice if there are any contradictions by any chance, to see if we may be contributing to that system of slavery, chaos, or confusion. To that system we may even oppose and not realize that we are actually upholding it. Because mental slavery by definition means that you want to be a slave. And how hard could it be to see that you are perhaps being mind controlled? Well, in order to understand this, we may be able to start asking ourselves some questions. And here are some very powerful questions. We'll start with the easy set of questions, and then we'll go to the harder, more direct questions. Here are the 7 moral questions by Brian Young or High Impact Flicks. 1. Do you have the moral right to rule or dominate another individual against their will? 2. Does anyone have the moral right to rule or dominate you if you don't want them to rule or dominate you? 3. Does anyone have a legitimately higher claim over your life and property than you? 4. Do you have a legitimately higher claim over the life and property of another? 5. Do you have a legitimate right to steal your neighbor's stuff? 6. Does anyone have the legitimate right to steal your stuff? And finally, 7. If you don't have the right to steal from or harm another person, can you confer that right that you don't have onto another person or group? If you have to pause the video, do so. But here are the more direct, complicated questions that I deeply encourage you sit with in your conscience to recognize perhaps I don't understand my own slavery, or I don't understand my own worldview, or perhaps I might be wrong. And having that sense of humility to the possibility of ourselves being wrong is how we learn and improve our lives in the very first place, across the board when it comes to any subject matter. But this is rather important. We're talking about a worldview that may deal with other people. So let's get into this. The 5 moral questions by Larkin Rose. 1. Is there any means by which any number of individuals can delegate to someone else the moral right to do something which none of the individuals have the moral right to do themselves? 2. Do those who wield political power, presidents, legislators, etc., have the moral right to do things which other people do not have the moral right to do? And if so, from whom and how did they acquire such a right? 3. Is there any process, constitutions, elections, or legislation by which human beings can transform an immoral act into a moral act without changing the act itself? 4. When lawmakers and law enforcers use coercion and force in the name of law and government, do they bear the same responsibility for their actions that anyone else would who did the same thing on their own? 5. When there is a conflict between an individual's own moral conscience and the commands of a political authority, is the individual morally obligated to do what he personally views as wrong in order to obey the law? Here's a quote from Henry David Thoreau in case you need more clarification on this. He says, "Must the citizen ever for a moment, or in the least degree, resign his conscience to the legislator? Why has every man a conscience then?" He also said, "The only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think is right." And finally, he also said, "Is it a freedom to be slaves or a freedom to be free of which we boast?" And this begs the question, are we perhaps under a sense of freedom that isn't actually free? This would constitute mental slavery. And perhaps you might be curious and you may question, well, how can we live in a world without authority or law and government? By these questions and asking ourselves these questions start to make us really curious, like, well, okay, we need to have these systems, so what are we to do? The difference between authority and leadership we covered last time, but here are some really relevant quotes that can clarify this understanding. William Godwin, a philosopher, said, "It is a violation of political justice to confound the authority which depends upon force with the authority which arises from reverence and esteem. The modification of my conduct which might be due in the case of a wild beast with the modification which is due to superior wisdom. The consequence which has flowed from confounding them has been a greater debasement of the human character than could easily have followed upon direct and unqualified slavery." From the Liberty newspaper in the 1800s, the little sergeant was not pleased with his office. He condemned sometimes, often, always, in his inner conscience, the severity which his commanders or the laws obliged him to apply. And yet, a slave of passive obedience, he executed his orders with death in his soul and tears filling his throat, but promptly, nevertheless. Adopting a principle for our guide and keeping straight on through calm and storm, we are sure to reach our destination sooner or later. The man of principle is the true leader, the mover and savior of the blind and unhappy masses, while the time server, though called a leader and enjoying for a time popular favor, is actually a slave to the prejudices and passions of the multitude and is led and used by them. Here's another perspective from Jason Gregory, an author, from the excerpt of a video he has titled "The Natural Human Being." "We can only leave people alone to live their own lives if we are sincere in our own introspection and willing to discard the conditioning that clouds our unity with our brothers and sisters. Where we are sincerely humble and free from agendas, we nourish and secretly transform the world, again, through not seeking to transform it. A sage has no agenda, and this brings spiritual oxygen into the world. We all have undergone various sorts of conditioning, and we all have the same physical and emotional states, so we can sympathize with the rest of the world which suffers as a result of the same hypnosis as ours. On the other hand, if we are all inherently the same, we also possess the same qualities that a sage lives by. Zirun, or naturalness, or self-so in Chinese, can only come to fruition when we trust that everything the universe has produced is fundamentally right and could be no other way. The systems of government, politics, banking, religion, and commerce are unnatural, but they have gotten us to a certain point, and we have learned many lessons from them. It is just that they are no longer needed. If we cannot trust the world and the people in it, we stand no chance for survival, because a species at war with itself is doomed. People often say that they trust the universe, but then they consistently condemn life according to their conditioned perspectives. And so, are we trying to mold the world around us? Are we trying to act as gods? Are we trying to interfere with other people's lives when they own themselves? These are the questions that we have to ask, and I encourage you, if you must, go back in this video and reflect on the 7 and 5 questions, because these questions were the ones that really broke it for me. I always did what I was told. I always was obedient, and I equated that much to virtue because that's how I was raised, even though I was also being taught simultaneously the golden rule and not to harm others because it is wrong. So I was taught two worldviews, and as I asked these questions, I realized there was a contradiction taking place. You might see it as well, and if you do, you might naturally become an abolitionist. Not by force, not because you are watching this video, but merely because you have come to a realization of knowing thyself. Thank you for watching this part of the docu-series Slavery Gone for Good.
All right, Mike, you're up with that. Let's see it.
I hadn't found one yet. That's crazy. I had to go back a good ways to find one. I'll have one tomorrow night for sure. But I definitely got a belly button.
You sweat, don't you?
Yeah, man.
All right, you're good.
I got a better one than this, but I hadn't found it yet. But you can see my belly button right there.
You look at your ass. You look. I didn't know you were. I thought you were looking for one online. I didn't know you were.
Oh,
That's a good pick, though.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I don't know if you can see it in this one. No, you can't quite see it in this one, but it's right there.
I think nipples count, Mike.
All right. I wanted to get the one in the pool where, before I had chemo, where I had the guns to back it up. If you had anything to say about me, you might need a dentist. But I don't see it on here. Isn't that a good picture?
Oh, that is a good picture. That's a really good picture. I like that. Aw.
One of the last times they ever wore a tie. Oh, that's one of my favorite pictures here too. Now we go to the beach, we dig a hole as deep as we are tall.
Oh,
A little swimming pool.
There's me and
cute.
yeah,
You're in the
there's
shallow
me and
end.
Elizabeth. Yeah.
Oh. Oh, cute. Oh, how cute.
That little red.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that a cute picture right there?
That is cute. Oh.
Oh, got him at the racetrack.
Yep.
Yep.
No, you always playing bumper cars.
Oh yeah.
Got the emoji hats.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
That's good painting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I did that once. Didn't turn out too good.
I just outline my hand and then draw a turkey.
We did that in school. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's cute.
Well, we I'll find a picture I was looking for and get it up there one night for everybody to see. But a lot of information shared tonight, folks. We love you too, guys. Thank you so much. We we still have a lot to learn about the history and the knowledge of how we got to where we are. We have the gist of it, which is enough to help us to stand up and find the lawful order for which we should do that peacefully. And you'll start to see us come more and more together on this in every aspect of it, especially when it comes to the children. You know, they sounded like Hillary Clinton and them sounded like bargaining chips, using children for bargaining chips for whether to have war or not, you know. And in the piece that Sheepdog read, that's just ludicrous. And that we sit there and we listen to this crap. And we are at a point now where if we continue to listen to it, folks, it's going to blow us by. We absolutely, thank you, Jenny Lacey. And I, for one, and I don't think the Sheepdogs are any different, aren't going to stand by and watch good people sell themselves out again, right? We know Chief Pontiac's not. We know Empress Shaka Rarebird is not. Chief Warhorse, Chief of the Lakota Tribe. Although I can't remember his name right this second, I feel bad about that. And many others. The military vets, folks, as well. The children, then the vets. Two of our strongest passions in this whole thing. Led to believe noble efforts in a war, and committed to their oath. They followed through with the ultimate sacrifice, many of them, only for us to find out years later that it was a war for profit, not of anything else. They could have done it without us. No more. Enough's enough. We're starting to learn to stand tall, stand proud, stand in law, stand in honor and dignity of a true sovereignty and a natural law, our God-given rights without fail. It's not easy. We sometimes think we're going to lose. Right in the last minute, we win. We just have to be persistent. Love you all. Hope you have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
My hands may shake, but when I speak, a truth won't break. Clouds roll in, shadows high. I stand tall, won't step aside. Lightning strikes, fire in my chest. Thunder calls, I won't forget. Fear may shout, but I push through. Ain't no storm that tells me what to do. The storm was loud, but so was I.